Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Court Views, where elite skills and rule IQ meet. I'm Sony Tawari, co-founder and CEO at RefMasters. Joined with me above to the left, Milton Chavis, who is the founder of MDW Basketball, longtime skills trainer and former pro, along with James Williams above me to my right, NBA referee, just finished his 14th season, multiple NBA finals. All-Star game. Gentlemen, we are in the thick of the NBA playoffs. A lot of hoopers would call this the end of their regular season, although now summertime hoops is coming into play. There's a debate that has been going on for a long time, but just lately I've been seeing it come up a little bit more. People comparing different eras of basketball. You've got the we done with the 90s, we done with the 80s, we done with this and that, and then the old timers saying that the current generation doesn't play any defense and they don't have this and that. We haven't talked about that before. Milton, I want to start with you. Do you have a perspective on this? What do you make of the divide between the younger generation of hoopers and those who may have grown up from a previous time?
For me, the older I've gotten, the more I've started just to appreciate just basketball itself, and yeah, respecting each era for what it is. I know, when I was coming up, I would argue up and down about my favorite players, but when you understand what the grind is like and what it takes to be, you know, that caliber of player, I think it's just a respect thing for me. Um, I'm not sure where the divide is. Um, I think the game is going to continue to grow and evolve and change, and the way they played back then was not a style that is conducive to this current time. Just you know, wanting to see your favorite players on the floor, the way they were allowed to be physical, the way they were allowed to do certain things. I like the way the rules are now, and we could always go back and forth on what I think about, the fouls versus the defense versus the, addition of the gather step. But overall, I appreciate each era for what it is.
James, interested in your thoughts on this. Obviously, you've got a vantage point as an official on the floor. You've been in the NBA now for 14 years. And even if I'm comparing now versus 2010, the game has evolved a lot. What are your thoughts on this conversation that we're having these days about comparing players from different eras and what era was better, et cetera?
Yeah, I don't think you can compare them.
Right.
I think it's not fair to anyone because the games were just played so much differently, right? It's the 80s and 90s was very physical. Today it's more about freedom of movement, five out, players run into the corners for threes. Teams shoot 30 to 40 threes a game now. Back in the 90s, they may have shot 5 to 10, and
Right.
10 was a lot. So I don't think it's fair to compare generations because the game just has changed so much. And I don't think it does justice to the players then or now. And it's an argument that I don't think there is a win or a winning argument. There's no way to say, well, this player's the best. Well, this player played in this generation. The rules were different. Hand checking rules were different. Physicality was different. So for me, even though I'm a referee, I'm also a sports fan, right? A lot of referees are fans. We played sports, but I've never really gotten into that comparing who's the greatest ever because it's just I don't even know how you can decide that.
Well, by the way, I love your Doc Rivers impersonation that you're doing with your voice right now.
it's it's so bad. I need to get some tea or something.
Or a little bit like, I don't know if you ever saw the old movie, The Kings of Comedy,
Oh
when they
yeah.
filmed the Kings of Comedy tour, and at the end, Bernie Mac was doing an impersonation of Phil Jackson, where he was like, "Scotty," throwing up the triangle, and It sounded a little bit like Phil Jackson, 1997, 98 Bulls, throat vibes there.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace. One of
Oh,
Chicago's
Bernie
great
Mac.
ones. Yeah, Bernie Mac, one of the greats.
I don't know why I have this in my head. Was he from Chicago? Is that in my
Yep.
head for a reason?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was Chicago. Big time.
Yeah. No,
Through and
brilliant.
through.
Well, no, I do like that voice. Now I'm
I
interested to see
don't. I don't like it at all.
if you have an upcoming game, maybe they'll mic you up for it. We'll get a
Yeah.
little bit of hey, Jalen, it was a foul or whatever. So I will say this about the debate. You both are just so polite and magnanimous. I like to debate. I'm a fan, so I like to. I want to debate players from different eras. Although I
Yeah.
agree it's very challenging, but I do think there's a difference sometimes when the current generation says that the previous generation was no good. I think there's a difference between saying who's the best player versus who's the greatest. Being the best is different than being the greatest. And the analogy that I think of is if I think of a 57 Chevy, a 57 Chevy was a great car. But if I compare it to a Ford Focus on the road today or a Nissan Altima, can drive faster. It can keep its passengers safer, right? Like by every technical definition, it's a better car than a 57 Chevy. But you're not going to find a lot of car enthusiasts that would say that a Nissan Altima today is a greater car than a 57 Chevy because in its time and its context and place in history, it was
Yeah.
great, right? So I think there's a difference between saying something is great and saying something is better. And we can say that players today, there's more skill training, there's different levels of conditioning. We
Yeah.
know more about how to manipulate the rules or the strategy of the game to maximize more efficient areas. We know more now. But maybe like a college math professor knows more about math than Isaac Newton did. But Isaac Newton is definitely a greater mathematician than almost every mathematician alive today, even though they are better mathematicians, right? So there's a difference between saying someone is better and someone is greater. And I think that gets lost sometimes.
That's a good
For
analogy.
sure. A great analogy. I used to get into it. We like I had my favorite players coming up. My favorite player ever was Kobe. So I would argue people up and down, but the more I watch and the more I just appreciate the game for itself. It's hard. It's really hard to just compare and say this player is greater than this player, vice versa.
Yeah, Kobe's got a big tree of people, right? I know even in the NBA today, there's a lot of guys who looked up to Kobe, were huge
Definitely.
Kobe fans. Zach Levine is he was like a Kobe disciple. There's a lot of them today that he influenced their games, and he was influenced by Michael. So, I mean, it's it's a tough debate, man. I don't know how you. I don't know. It's
It's really
always
just preference.
harder.
That's what I
Yeah,
feel.
yeah,
One thing I do consider when I compare greatness levels is I think about how much better someone was against those in their time period.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the best and the second best? And I use that a little bit. So when I try to tell someone who wasn't around for Michael Jordan, I try to tell them about how much better Michael Jordan was than the second best player at the time. Whereas we have great players today, but maybe the gap between one and two is maybe not as great. So that's something that I think about a little bit. But to your point, everyone's got their own criteria. And honestly, people that want to make the standard the same, like people get into this for the MVP, they get so frustrated because they go, oh, well, the MVP, what is the criteria? It changes every year. If it was the same criteria, it would be kind of boring.
Yeah.
The fun of it is that we get to debate and have these conversations every year,
yeah.
Right. Michael would have had it for years. Kobe would have had it for years.
Yeah.
Bron would have had it for years.
Mhm.
Very, very boring.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. All that said, let's get into some film. It's one of the things we do really well here at Court Views. And Milton, you shared a play on your MDW basketball Instagram recently,
Oh Lord.
and it's something that comes up all the time when I talk to people, whether watching a game or playing pickup basketball. It comes up all the time. And I'll have to admit, before working with folks like the both of you, I didn't really understand that well either. And it's when a player fumbles a basketball and folks feeling like these are traveling steps. So Milton, you posted this. What are the things you hear from people, and what reaction have you gotten on this one?
A lot of different reactions. First of all, if that was per NBA or FIBA traveling rules, it would have been legal anyway. So even if you had him uh, if you had him have control the entire time, from the gather to his two legal steps after, it would have been legal on those levels. But
Mhm.
if the official would have deemed this a fumble play, this would have been legal on all levels because his steps would have reset after the fumble.
So what about this thing of when I hear people say this, well, what if they pretended it's a fumble, but it really wasn't a fumble?
Mhm.
James, you're as a referee, I think referees can tell the difference between these two.
Yeah, you normally can, and that does play a role into it. If you purposely, well, let me give you like the example of, if I'm going to go up for a shot, Milton closes out on me, and I know, no, I'm not going to get my shot off, so I just drop the ball
Yeah.
intentionally. I can't be the first to touch it. But if I do go up and he's coming and I am trying to shoot and it slips out of my hand, I can go recover it. So you, as a referee, have to determine, is this an accident or was this done on purpose? If it's done on purpose, you can't be the first to touch. If it is an accident where the ball literally does just slip out of your hand, you are allowed to go and recover the ball. So yeah, if you're trying to fake it and do it, where you're not really, it's not a true fumble. But on this play again, he's right because the gather's right there on the right, and he gets two steps
Yep.
in the NBA
Yep.
after that. As long as they're not consecutive, the consecutive foot, then that's a legal play. So I think what throws people off on plays like this is the change in direction. Most people are used to guys or ladies just going straight to the hole. When you
Yep.
change that direction, it throws them for a loop. Or if you step back, those things throw them off, and it hasn't, not really, it doesn't have any bearing on the legality of the play. It's all about uh, how many you can take after the gather. It doesn't matter which direction you take those steps, forward, backwards, sideways, completely up to you.
Yeah, the change of direction, and what I'm starting to see too is the independence between the upper and lower body. And I'm not going to use the word unorthodox, Milton, but this is evolving. The player's ability to be really ambidextrous and be able to just have independence in various parts of their body and move them in different directions. That is something that we're just seeing a lot more progression. People are acquiring these skills. I think people talk a lot about Kyrie as
Yep.
one person that has really mastered that, but a lot of other players are building that skill up as well, right?
Yeah, that, and you see players doing a lot of deceleration now. It used to be you're just going at one speed to the rim, but now they've learned that by decelerating, you basically take the advantage of the defender out. Like they're being so aggressive, trying to chase you down from behind, that as soon as you decelerate, you've already pretty much put them in harm's way for a foul because
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to stop in time or whatever the case may be. So you're starting to see a lot of deceleration from ball handlers as they drive to the basket, and they're finding that has a really a big advantage on trying to fool the defenders.
Definitely, it gives you time to read the situation a bit better. Gives you more time to read it, as well as it throws that shot blocker's timing off as well. So even if they don't necessarily foul you, they may prematurely jump and you get a cleaner look or be able to make a better play.
It's really, really good. I want to play another clip that you posted recently of LeBron James in the post. And this was another one of those, haven't we gotten past this kind of moments of being able to discern? But yeah, I wanted to get your take on this, Milton. I guess people were posting a lot about this because they wanted your take, and then I don't know if you've gotten a
Hmm.
lot of feedback on it too.
Definitely. And I was just being technical here.
Yeah, that's a
Just
travel
kind
right
of,
there.
yeah. I was being real stickler in the beginning with his, pivot foot slightly moving, but I think that's one that you kind of, like James alluded to, like the cop analogy that he uses, or the speed limit analogy. But this one right here, most certainly,
Yeah, that's a travel.
lifts both feet before releasing the ball to start his dribble.
Yep.
And then, as he attacks to the basket, cradles the ball, gather 1, 2, 3 steps after gather.
Yeah, this is a play that the closest person to it is not going to have the best look. If that's the person on the baseline, they're going
Yeah.
to be refereeing Jamal. Their eyes are on Jamal from his waist up. It has to come from the official on the outside. So that's sometimes what people don't understand. The people that is the referee, usually that's farthest away, has the best look because he or she has the bigger picture of all of this. But this really comes down to rhythm. Like the first time I saw it, the rhythm was off for me, and so I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that didn't feel right."
Yeah.
And so certainly when you slow it down, you see just like Milton broke it down, gather 1, 2, 3 right there. So that is indeed a travel at every level of basketball known to man, and we just unfortunately missed it.
That's great.
But we are human. That's why we're having this podcast, because I think when people can see referees as human, and in your job, you make mistakes too. We just talked about Bernie Mac, right, on that Kings of Comedy tour. There's that line where he's talking about his family. He goes, "I'm not afraid to talk about them because some of your family members are effed up too." So we all got effed up family members. We all make mistakes. Yeah, we missed this play. This is a travel. He takes more than the allowed 2 steps after he gathers the ball. Even on the initial start of the move, he actually technically travels there because he does split that left foot,
Yeah.
which was his pivot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, good play. Yeah. And I tell you, like one more thing, like referees, we look at this stuff, and it's all about helping us to recognize patterns for players. So it's like, okay, like I know it. I'm not going to stay here on this podcast, but I know from watching all the film, like which NBA players have really bad footwork that I tend to pay a little bit more attention to. And certainly if they have bright colored shoes on that night, it's going to help me. So I can off the top of my head, I can name 20 guys real quick who their footwork it's not good. And so when I have them in games, I got to make sure I keep my eye on, because they got me last time. Maybe I didn't catch it. And so we don't want to be kind of got more than one time. It's like you get me once, okay, I'm going to tip my hat. But the next time I have you, I have to be better. And so that's kind of the competition, right? Of trying to be the best you can be out there on the floor.
Definitely. I think a L2M report came out on Tyrese Maxey's shot. And
Yeah,
I got a bunch of questions on, like, why do we even have this? It doesn't matter anyway. And I was just like, man, don't you just appreciate the transparency? Because, like, they would be so upset if nothing ever came out from the league, if nobody ever, felt, if they didn't feel like everyone was being held accountable. So it's like, okay, on one side, you're going to be mad this way. On another side, you're mad that they're sharing the L2M report when they're just trying to be transparent and help you understand that the game is not perfect. And I had to just explain to them, this game is not even meant to be perfect. There's
no,
no way possible that this game would ever be perfect like people think in their minds.
yeah,
So, like, players miss shots, they're going to miss shots every single game. Players turn the ball over, it's going to be a turnover every single game. It's just how this game is. That's what makes it beautiful, though.
I 100% agree. It's just a travel after the gather. That last right foot coming up becomes his third step.
Yep.
And as you see, Mitchell Robinson is closing out. The referee's eyes are not going to be on his feet. That's why we missed this play. The only way we can get this play as a crew is if the official closest to it, who is doing his job, he is refereeing the defender on the closeout. His eyes are only on Mitchell Robinson as Mitchell Robinson closes out. So he needs help again from the official farthest away who can help with the feet, because that official is not going to be consumed with Mitchell Robinson. So he has the freedom to look at Tyrese's feet before before the pump and draw and the subsequent contact. But Nick, who's on the play, there is no way in God's green earth he is going to be looking down there when there's this pump fake, and now here comes this defender flying at him. He's going to have to referee the defender. And so, again, like you said, players make mistakes, coaches, everybody makes mistakes. It's part of the game. This is a mistake on the closeout, right?
Yep.
It's an undisciplined closeout that leads to a foul and an and one. So I understand people are very passionate. I remember as a kid growing up, I used to live and die with every call that went against the Bulls because I grew up outside of Chicago. And I used to hate it when they called the Bulls for anything because the Bulls never foul. It was always the Pistons and the Pacers and everybody else, right? So I totally get it from a fan's perspective. Now that I'm in this job, I see the whole other side of it. It's just you can't be perfect. The game moves way too fast. There's way too much action going on, and you are responsible for so much as an official here. And sometimes we have a saying that we say, sometimes the game beats us, and right here the game beat us. This was so subtle that we're not going to catch it. And so, but I think the L Twims, you either love them or you hate them. But I do think they add a level of transparency that show people the games aren't rigged. We already knew officials are imperfect. That's just part of any sport. But we want you to know that there's nothing behind a black curtain that we're trying to hide. We're just trying to be open and honest here. What you decide, how you decide to perceive that information, that's up to you. If you're a Knicks fan here, it doesn't help you, right? I get it, but it's a part of the game. It always has been, and it always will be.
For sure. And I also believe like the officials on the outside that you talked about, there's no way he can see through this defender right here. Look at it. Like look
I
at
mean,
the
he's
angle.
got
There's
he's got Embiid and McBride in front of him, so
no
it's
way possible. No way possible to see that. And I actually put that in the video as well because I understand you guys' process.
yeah. And so the way this would
Especially
work
on a
for
play like
us,
that.
the way this would work for us in grading wise is Nick, who is the official there, number 3. He's going to get an incorrect no call on his stat on the travel, and he's going to get a correct call on the defensive foul. So he gets graded twice on this one play. And if you have too many incorrect calls, it impacts you. And are you able to advance, or do you move up the ladder? It has impacts on the officials. So all these decisions are being graded post game, and you get graded on all of these things, whether you make a call or you don't. Sometimes you don't make a call like we didn't hear, and it's the wrong decision, and so you get dinged on that as well. So he gets 2 calls here. One's incorrect, one's correct, and he can't see it. But that's the job is they're saying somebody has to see it. We didn't see it.
That's tough.
I love this conversation though at Court Views. We're not just trying to talk about correct, incorrect. We're trying to talk about why. So I love the analysis that both of you are bringing to this. And what you just said there at the end, James, reminded me of the concept we talk about in officiating sometimes, which is the difference between an incorrect call and an incorrect no call, and
Right.
how sometimes crimes of commission can be worse than crimes of omission. And as a
Yes.
fan or a player, if you think about that, it's really true. You think about if you get a whistle in a place where there isn't a foul, that will have a bigger impact on the game usually than a missed whistle. And so referees are cognizant of that truth, and that does come into the decision making, or it comes into the mechanic, I should say. But yeah, it's really, really good conversation here. The funny thing I got with the L2M, I had a Knicks fan, a really close friend of mine, shared a screenshot of this and just talked about how painful it was to see. Like why do they even have to do this? It's just driving a knife into my back. But it was the same conversation. It's like, well, when they didn't, then people complained that there wasn't transparency and accountability. So the bottom line for me is kind of like you can't win.
And
Yeah.
if you think about this, the ending of this game, right, versus the ending in Iowa, UConn. You see how much controversy there was over that call on the illegal screen. No one even knew that this was illegal until the NBA admitted it in an L2M. It wasn't. No one said a word. All they could say was, "Oh my God, how did he foul him on that three?" That was the whole topic of conversation. And it's some errors are. I even think sports fans are like, "This is an error." Yeah, technically, but even they, if they're truly objective, which no sports fan is, they'd be like, okay, is that what we're talking about here? That right foot moved 3 inches there. That's what we're talking about. The most obvious thing that happened here on this play is Mitchell Robinson closing out and just running right into him.
And Robinson said that in his post game interview too. He said he should have been more disciplined on the closeout.
Yeah.
There you go. Because of the proliferation of threes in the game today, players close out a lot harder, a lot more uncontrolled and undisciplined now. Because they're shooting 30 and 40 threes, and you see players when they close out, it is not the stump, jabbing of your steps, just a hand up. It's launching at the shooters now. And I always ask players when they do it, I'm like, you just took a guy that's 30% from there, and you've put him on the free throw line where he's 90%. That it's a huge difference.
Definitely.
Yep. I got to say, gentlemen, there's no finer thing than to drink this green tea and hear you all wax on about the intricacies, the finer elements of rule IQ and skill. So it's a beautiful thing. James, you had a play that you shared with me from this, actually not from the same game, but from this series.
Yep.
And you shared it with me, and I think you called it the Milton Special.
Yeah. Because I'm in the trail on this play. And when it happened, I said, he'd been watching Milton. That's exactly what I said to myself. Because everybody went crazy. They're like, it's a travel. And I'm like, that is not a travel. I don't know if you've seen this, Milton.
I
But
have
take a look
not.
at it. Take a look at it. All right, Milton's seen it for the first time. Take a look at Jalen Bronson here.
Wow. Wow. That's definitely up my alley.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
All he's missing is he's missing a flip flap or a a spin,
Yeah.
but he's going in that realm for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. Minus the turnover. Throw it off the backboard or something.
Yeah, right. But his right's his pivot, or I think it's his right. I gotta go back, and then he steps through, and then he pauses. Right, there's a pause right there. He pauses. He's
Yeah.
like, and that foot's still up in the air, so we're still legal. He can just sit there on that foot the whole time.
And that's what
again,
he should have done. He should have
Yeah.
just waited on that foot. He'd have
Yep.
been fine.
yep.
Been
Maybe Jalen
fine.
didn't know that, but he
Right.
if he just stopped on that left foot right there and just kept that right foot in the air, he is legal until that foot comes back down.
Yeah, we always teach players to, well, they used to teach players not to jump in the air without knowing what you're going to do. And you see a lot of turnovers when a player jumps and passes the ball. And this is going to become like a new skill, I think, for players. That slow step and how a player manages their options on a slow step is going to be a whole new category,
The next
Yeah.
evolution in basketball is already happening.
Yep. That's exciting.
But it's really hard to get people to understand why this is not a travel. Like they don't buy it. They do not buy it. Earlier in this game, he did a step through, and Bobby Jackson is one of the assistants there. I tried to explain to him, and he wasn't having any parts of it. And he played in the league, right? They just don't understand it, and I don't know how you explain it to them that where it makes sense to them. But I saw this play in the trail, and I was like, "Oh, you've been watching Milton," and then he turned it over. I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to go run the other way." So, I mean, people they wonder like, what are referees thinking in playoff games? This is an 8-point game, 3 minutes to go, and I'm thinking, "Oh, he's been watching Milton's content."
Love it.
Oh, wow.
Love it. We
That's
gotta
big time.
get to. I want to see one of these days. We're gonna get a player that's gonna actually acknowledge that too. We're gonna get whether it's a Jalen Brunson or someone is gonna acknowledge. They're gonna be like, yeah, Milton. I looked at Milton. Milton said this was good. This is clean. So it's gonna happen.
I've just started seeing more and more players doing the deceleration thing. It's becoming more and more common in the game.
Yeah. All right, so let's pivot a little bit. Wanted to come to a play that Milton had posted recently. I should say a clip of him working out with some of his players that he trains. And we like to bring the skill development aspect into the conversation here at Court Views. So Milton, you working with players a lot on these fundamental plays and really getting the technique, getting the footwork right on plays like this, which is taking one step and pulling up for the shot. So when you're working with players on things like this, what are the focal points? What are the things that you see players struggle with the most?
Especially in high school basketball in my area, the open step rip through, so they catch the ball with one foot on the floor, and they proceed as they put step two down. They proceed to they fail to release the ball to dribble before that pivot foot comes off the floor, and it's like blatant though. So what we're working on here is just catching the ball with both feet down, or both feet in the air, or both feet on the floor, one of the two. So they can choose either foot to be pivot, and then we go cross step rip through. So we keep that pivot foot down, and we go across the body with that step two or non-pivot, and that usually helps them avoid that travel call, as well as making yourself a threat as a shooter, so they close out too hard, like we just talked about in the other segment, and then you get to a spot to shoot one dribble pull up, one or two dribble pull up, or just different options as well. That's just all I had on the video, but we'll work on a bunch of different things out of this.
Yeah, question on this with the one dribble pull up.
Yeah.
Let's rewind a little bit. What's the first thing? Is there something before one dribble pull up that you work on with the player in this context, or is that really like the first building block that you're working on them with?
I usually layer it, so we get to the basket first, then we get to probably a floater mid-range area.
Okay.
We'll get it, and then we'll get to the one dribble pull-ups, the two dribble pull-ups. Then we'll get into even more options out of that. It just depends on the situation, but I like to give them the baseline, give them the fundamental principle, and then allow them to go through it live, so they can actually get real live reps and actually react to that defender.
That's really neat. And James, the first thing I noticed in this video is his brightly colored sneakers, Milton sneakers.
Yeah.
So he's helping us out there just in
Yes,
case
he is.
we need it.
Yep.
But yeah, James, on your end, as an official, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but there are places in the game where the official, like the official that's working that area of the court, is going to scan their eyes down and try to look at the feet. Is that correct? Or what are the what are the nuances there in terms of what the when the official does that and when they don't?
Yeah, so the referee should, on as soon as a player catches the ball on a pass, you want to take your eyes to their feet. Like as soon as this young man caught the ball there, like my eyes went down and I see that his left foot he establishes as as his pivot, and so I want to stay with that until he puts the ball down because he can't move his pivot until that ball's released, right? And so as officials, if the better we get at doing that, the more travels we will catch, or the more legal footwork we won't penalize. Because a lot of times, what officials do is they just see it looks funky. Oh, he must have traveled, or she must have traveled, when they held their pivot foot the entire time. So these young people are doing their work in the gym. They're working on their footwork. They're trying to get better. We as officials have to do the same, get better with recognizing legal footwork so we don't penalize, something that they've been in the gym working on for hours because we aren't really sound in our mechanics because it matters, right? So like there, he caught it. He had both feet on the floor. So he gets to
Yep.
choose either one. Only thing he can't do is split both of them. You don't get two, you get one when you come down on two. And so as a referee, we want to see that time he came down on two. So the same kid now has both feet as options for pivots. And that's what we want to do. We want to get our eyes down there as soon as they catch the ball on the catch or the gather so we know legally what they can do.
And another thing that we're working on here as well, a key point is as you see when they catch, they automatically step that opposite foot back. So that is a trigger step. That's what I call a trigger step. But you use that as leverage and momentum to kind of push you forward. So it makes your first step a little bit faster.
As long as you don't step out.
100%.
That happens
100%.
a lot.
And where you are on the floor. Yeah, if you're in that
Yeah.
corner, you don't have much room.
You in the corner, don't do it.
Yeah, yeah, happens all the time. Um, Related here on a skill level, I
Hmm.
saw Carmelo Anthony showing someone a drill where he was taking one dribble and coming to a pull up. And the thing that really struck me was how much force he put into that dribble and how he used the force of that dribble to get up. Because Carmelo Anthony was so tremendous at being able to rise up quickly on that shot, but still shoot it with touch.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was incredible. People also just sometimes you lose sight of the difference between what you can do at the pro level. Pros like yourself, Milton, and those of us like me that just kind of play pickup basketball. You see a one dribble pull up, oh, it's a one dribble pull up. But with the force and speed and control that you're doing it at the highest level, because you have this much space and time to get it, I just was so taken aback by how hard he was dribbling the ball into the court on that drill.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it speeds everything up. So the harder you dribble, the quicker you can pick the basketball up, the quicker you can shoot it. So
Yep.
very very important detail, especially for Melo, man, getting those shots up against those NBA players. People have no idea how good, how athletic, how strong, how fast they really are.
Yeah.
Man, one split second later, it's a block.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like what James was saying last. Oh, go ahead, James.
No, I was just gonna say they're super talented and
Yeah.
athletic. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Like I was
Yeah.
reminded what you were saying in our last episode about the college game. And you're like, the difference between this and the pros is still huge.
It's not
Yeah.
even close.
Yeah.
It's
So
not even close.
it's good that at Court Views, right? We want to spend time to talk about the skill part of it. This is more of Milton's world. And then it's great to hear James' kind of response to it. I wanted to play something that we didn't get a chance to look at last time, but this is coming from James's world a little bit more. We look at understanding how referees look at coverage and how a referee will look at coverage on the ball and potentially off the ball. James, this was a clip that you had shared with me several weeks back. We were going to use for a session and we ended up not being able to use it. But I thought it'd be, kind of instructive here because we have plays like this all the time, whereas official, it's not always clear and cut where the official should put their eyes. So on this play, the official there in the trail is looking at that low post matchup, but I think the lead is as well, whereas that official in the trail could be looking at that potential rebounding matchup that hasn't materialized. And then without
Yes.
it, we see a lot of contact, not called. And it's an interesting, I think, context as a player or as a coach to really try to understand where a referee is looking or where they're not looking and how that can influence their ability to do what they do on the court. So just wanted to tee this up. But James, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing on a play like this.
Yeah. Officials have coverage areas on the floor, and they're constantly changing based on the location of the ball. In one possession, it can change 3, 4, 5, 6 times where you're supposed to be looking. So here, when that ball gets dumped into the post, the lead official on the baseline should actually be a little bit to his left. He's a little too far in. And because the ball handler, the post player there, she's facing up, if she travels, that is his responsibility on the baseline. Now, if her back was to the basket, the responsibility changes. It goes to the official on the outside instead of the official on the baseline. But because she's facing up, the official on the baseline is now responsible for her traveling and the defender. The trail official, who they are highlighting right now, she has to get off the ball because there's always action off the ball. So we don't need two people watching that mid post up game there. She needs to get off the ball in the trail and find moving players, active moving players. In this case, players who are crashing for the board. And so, because the lead official on the baseline is going to be refereeing the shot, he's going to take the shooter up and down. So he's not going to know by the time he goes from her coming back down to the floor, and then by the time he sequences his eyes to the next play, the rebounding, it's too late. So this is something where we want the trail to be a little bit more disciplined, get off the ball here. She needs to get off the ball and find. You see those two defenders? They're in help mode.
Yep.
And in the NBA, you can't do that. It's illegal defense. You can't just stay in the paint without guarding somebody for 3 seconds. Because if that's the case, nobody's going to get into the paint because you're going to run into Bam Adebayo. You're going to run into Brooke Lopez. You're going to run into, all of these bigs that can block shots. And so we in the NBA, you force them to come from a farther distance, which is outside of the lane, or either but you can't just stay there for more than 3 seconds as that help defender in case the primary defender gets beat, you're there to help. Of course, they don't have that rule in college, but we want that trail official to get off ball. And in this case, we want her to follow 22 as she goes in for the rebound. It's a good no call on the rebound. It's not a foul. It's just it's an out of bounds play, and who last touches it, which it looks like it's Stanford.
On a play like that, though, so it's not a foul on the rebound. There's a bit of contact, but to your point, not illegal contact. But
right.
Milton, if I'm a coach, maybe I'm teaching my players to be aware of where the referee's looking and where they're not looking.
Definitely.
And using that to give myself an advantage on the court.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Any type of
Absolutely.
advantage you can gain by knowing and understanding something, why not take advantage of it?
Absolutely. I'll tell you what they do in the NBA. At the NBA level, a lot of times guys will look back to see if you're looking. And if you are looking, you just give them a smile like, yep, I'm right here. If you're not looking, I'm telling you now, there's a reason why they look back first. Because if you're not looking, they're going to get a shot in. That's how crafty they are. But they will. There are some enforcers out there that'll take a peek, and they're going to see exactly where you're looking. And if you're not looking where you're supposed to be looking, they're going to get you. You're about to get got. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to talk about here. Trying to look at look at the craft and the deepest level possible. And for players, understanding how referees see the game, what they're looking at, what they're not looking at, is incredibly beneficial. And for referees, understanding how players are learning the game is also really important and really beneficial as well. I think you mentioned before pattern recognition and looking for what are you looking for? Looking for the right things is of course going to be really important. So, gentlemen, that's all the film that we had for today's session. As always, a lot of fun. I want to ask your takeaways. What was the main takeaway that you took from today's conversation? But before that, I just want to say thank you to those of you checking out what we're doing here with Court Views. We're continuing to build this to build this podcast, to build our audience, and we really just want to make a better game. We want to make conversation around the game better. We want to make players and coaches and referees. We want to arm them and make them, come to the game feeling more prepared. And even fans, just having it's good to complain. We sell "Ref You Suck" shirts, but we would love for the fans to even be more knowledgeable. So when they're complaining that the ref sucks, maybe they could say not just "Ref You Suck," but they can know if it's the lead ref, is it the trail ref, is it the center ref, and there's the shirt exactly. So, Milton, we've done
Mhm.
3 of these podcast episodes now.
Yeah.
What are your big takeaways? What would you like to see more of?
My biggest takeaways is that this is really cool. I'm able to learn from a different perspective, and I'm a sponge, and I just love to learn and grow. I feel like, I know I say it all the time, but I feel like I never get to a point where I don't want to continue to learn. So I think that part is really cool, and just learning basketball from different perspectives. I think um, this type of content isn't the Stephen A. Smith, isn't the usual type of content, but I think it's extremely important. And I think once people really take the time to listen, take the time to just take the time to appreciate what we're trying to do, and just appreciate the game for itself, I think this will take off. Just take some time for the genuine stuff to kind of make its rounds, but
Yeah,
and I'm also trying to figure out creative ways that we can kind of get our content out there as well. And I'm thankful for the support that we have right now, but it's just the very beginning.
absolutely. Let's see if we can grow with. I mean, I could start doing more yelling and more theater to spice it up and make it more ESPN or FSN ready. But it would be really great if we didn't have to do that.
Yeah,
James,
definitely.
what are your takeaways? What are the things that you're looking forward to most with this podcast as we continue to grow it?
Well, for me, I think it's about bridging that gap that we talk about with the empathy gap. That to me is the big part of this because um, the reason why we have so few officials today joining the ranks and it's having an impact at the high school level, right? Because a lot of games are starting to get postponed or canceled because they don't have officials for the games. And that's not good. And as the game is exploding in popularity, the the number of officials is dwindling. So we have a problem, and empathy is a big part of it. It really is. We have to be able to see the humanity in everyone who's playing a part, whether it's a player, coach, AD, referee, doesn't matter. We just have to know that all those people involved are imperfect human beings. Everyone. So the same grace that you extend to the player who misses shots and turns the ball over and commits dumb fouls at the end of games or whatever the case may be, you got to extend that same empathy. And for whatever reason, I guess there's a reason why they're called fans. Is we're fanatical, right, as fans.
Yeah.
But I'm most excited about trying to bridge that gap, trying to get people to number one have more empathy, and then number two, it's a part of the game that a lot of people never thought about doing. Hey, refereeing is a fun game. It's a fun job. It pays well. It allows you to stay in shape. It allows you to be a part of a game that you love, and it can take you all over the country and world. It's certainly done that for me. I've gone to places I never would have imagined if it were not for basketball. and refereeing. I live in a real nice upscale neighborhood in the white folks area of Chicago. I can only do that refereeing the NBA. So it's like there's a lot of benefits, man. I'm telling you. So try to bring more people to the game as a referee. That's also something I'm very passionate about because it is fun, it is exciting, and you make some great friends along the way that are friends for life. So that's what I'm really excited about. I love learning, like Milton said, from a perspective of what the players are putting in, the time and energy they're putting in to get better at their craft, because it helps me to become better at mine.
For sure. I know another thing that can help us out as well, especially we just keep tabs on the new rule changes. I know there were a couple, like 12 new high school rules
Yep.
changed earlier today. So like us
Yep.
discussing those type of things, I think that'll be cool as well.
You have
Yeah, that's
12 new
really
rules for next year?
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was seeing that too. I saw one that was related to flopping,
Yep.
and there's some other ones too. So we'll definitely going to get some content related to all of this. Thank you for putting that on our radar, Milton. That's awesome. And for those of you out there with us, we're at the ground floor. We're building this, like Milton said, it's a new way of really talking about the game, trying to bridge the gap. As James said, we just ask three things. Share your feedback. Let us know what stuff you're really liking, what stuff is maybe not as interesting, because we're continuing to improve how we deliver this content. Second, share your plays. If you've got plays you want to talk about, share them with us. And we're looking for a little bit of everything. Today we did a little bit of fumble. We did a little bit of post footwork. We're trying to get that steady diet going. And last, spread the word. If you're already subscribed to our podcast, following us on Spotify or on YouTube or on Instagram, that's awesome. Let some of your friends know as well. We want to continue growing this, making an awesome conversation, and just continuing to elevate the game. So we appreciate your support, and we look forward to continuing to build this in the future. For Milton and for James, I am Sony. Thanks again for checking out Court Views. See you next time. I'm going to finish this tea now. Oh, did you get a confetti thing? What? You got a confetti thing?
What
That's
was
what just
that?
happened. Was that
What
my
You
was
didn't
screen?
see that? You didn't see that?
Yeah.
No, I just went through this. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Oh wow. That is
You like it?
crazy.
I want
Is
it.
it?
That is
Why does that work for
crazy.
Milton and not us?
Oh, it's no
Not
fair.
sure. I did get a new MacBook though, so maybe that's it. I don't know.
That was hilarious. He did it twice,
That
and
is that is crazy. All right,
it didn't do
No,
it that time.
that just doesn't recognize deuces for me.
There it is.
That's
James, does
crazy.
it work for you?
I got a MacBook. I must have got a cheap one. No, it don't work.